Oh, I miss that music. I love grooving to the music. You know who else likes grooving to the music? Have you noticed Euron Brook whenever his intro music comes on, he you could see him getting all into it. Anyway,
Oh,
guys, yeah, he does a little of the headbanging thing. Hi, folks. Welcome to TV Talk, brought to you by the Ayn Rand Center UK. We've been on hiatus for a little while, but we got a pretty interesting show to talk about today, Mr. Sunshine, a Netflix show. I'm Mark Pellegrino, and I'm here with my usual suspects, Jennifer Buani and Jacqueline Schumann. Say hello, everybody.
hello, everybody.
Hello.
And we're in the same room this time.
Yes, they're in the same room for reasons that we'll talk about later on. But since I've only seen half of the show for reasons we'll talk about also later on, I want to just give a little preamble from an objectivist perspective of art, and then I'll let the ladies take it from there and talk about Mr. Sunshine, the show in particular, because they've gotten all the way through it maybe a couple of times, so they could talk about it in much more depth than I. But look, in philosophy is a really complicated thing. And when you write philosophy at ethics, it's very, very complex and hard to translate to people. Um, but art is an easy to grasp thing. It's a concretization of values, as Ayn Rand would say. So a piece of art can say a thousand things to a person. It can communicate lots and lots and lots of values to a person in a single image or a single scene or a single narrative. And so it's sort of art, it's sort of philosophy compressed. And so I think this particular show, on lots of different levels, aesthetically and with respect to narrative and the heroic nature of the characters, represents a great deal of what objectivists would consider fine art, which means it's beautiful to look at. The characters are heroic, and by heroic, we mean they go after values, they're passionate about their values, and they may or may not be successful. I'll leave this to the ladies to tell us, because I don't know yet who wins and who loses, but I'm assuming the virtuous sort of come out on top, as they should, because that's the kind of world we ought to live in, and oughts are what art deals with. So, ladies, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us about Mr. Sunshine. What kind of show is this?
All right. Well, I will. I'll do like the quick Wikipedia and IMDb breakdown. So, Mr. Sunshine is a South Korean television series that aired in 2018. Started in 2018. It's got 24 episodes, and the episodes are long. Anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half in length, especially as you get closer to the end. It is, and I'm also I apologize to any native Korean speakers for how much I'm going to butcher names, and but I will do my best. It's written by Kim Un-suk and directed by Lee Young-bak. It stars the fabulous Lee Byung-hun as now I have to like switch back as Eugene Choi. He is a Korean naval captain. It also stars Kim Tae-ri, who plays Lady A-sin and is a member of nobility. And the setting takes place.
I have to make a little correction. He's not a Korean naval captain.
Sorry, he's a Korean American naval captain. So
Marine captain.
Korean in the he's Korean, but in the American military.
Marine
So
Corps.
thank you for making that correction. See, because I'm trying to channel my inner Mark and doing all the intro. Like
I think it's important because Americanism is such a real identity for him. So
it is, and in fact, so this takes place in the era right before or around the time that the Japan-Korea treaty that some say was actually the wide-held belief is that it was forced on Korea. This was 1905, where Korea basically lost their sovereignty. They lost their ability, they lost their currency, their ability to trade as a sovereign nation. And then eventually that was 1905, in 1910, Japan finally annexed Korea. So this takes place in the 10 or so years before that, and it's called the Joseon Dynasty. And so the opening scene, which I think is great, is the image of it's Lee Byung-hun as Eugene Choi in his American military suit, walking down this long like bridge. And you see, so he's clearly Korean, but he's in this, great American uniform, and he's actually sent to Korea because the American president was Roosevelt, right? Roosevelt. The president at the time said that told Eugene Choi and his other partner, who I can't remember his name, but he plays Kyle, who's an American, and that's a whole other thing that we're going to have to talk about. But they send him there to be the new lead for the American legation in Korea. And at this time, so Korea at this time is still a monarchy. There are classes. It's the nobility versus the serfs. It's very, very class oriented. And Eugene Choi himself was a slave who escaped Korea after his parents were brutally killed in front of him. And as a young boy, he escaped to America. And now he comes back he's told to come back to Korea, and which he never calls his homeland. He always refers to America as his homeland, especially as relates to the ideology and the individualism, which are fantastic objectivist themes, obviously. And he meets and falls in love with, for all intents and purposes, a princess, Lady Asin, or her name is Go Asin, who is just this beautiful young woman. But it just so happens that she is in secret, she's part of the Righteous Army, which is the revolutionary faction that is trying to get Korea back, to be a sovereign nation. And they're fighting for Korean freedom and independence. So the stage is set for
she's also a sniper for them.
She's
An
yes,
amazing sniper.
yeah, yeah. Did you want to?
No, that was it.
Yeah. But yeah, she begs her grandfather to let her train to be part of the army, and after refusing, he finally calls what becomes her sensei, her master, who is played by, what is his name? Jang Sang-gu, Gunnar Gu, who's played by Moo Sung Choi. And the grandfather calls him and basically fine, go train her. And he takes her in the woods, and over the course of years, trains her not only to be a sniper, but basically like a ninja. She moves like a ninja, she shoots amazing. And it just so happens that Eugene Choi, the naval commander, is also an amazing sniper and a fighter. He's fought in the Spanish-American War. He's tasked with this assassination mission to kill members that I think Americans that were being traitors. So the stage is set for an amazing story, and then add into it two more men that fall in love with Lady Asin. So Eugene Choi falls in love with her. Two more men fall in love with her. One is the person that she's supposed to actually marry, that she's been promised to, but he's been off in Tokyo having a good old time and being frivolous. He's an aristocrat, royalty himself, or actually his parents are landowners. They're like the richest landowners in all of Korea. And so he's been promised to Lady Asin, but he has really no ambition in life, wants to be have pretty things around him, but he's a very intelligent man, extremely handsome. She wants nothing to do with him. She rebuffs him at every attempt because she has met now. When she goes out being a sniper, she dresses in menswear with a long suit and trench coat and a hat, and pulls her and wears a bandit's face. And so nobody can tell that she's a woman. Nobody would ever suspect that it's her. So so she's off trying to fight for the revolution. And then Eugene sees him, and he finally in like episode 2, I think he realized, it might have even been episode 1, but no, it was episode 2. He realizes who she is. They both realize who each other is because they both wear the same garb when they're being snipers. And so it's a love story there that everybody wants to get off the ground. Everybody wants that love story to happen. And then the fourth person who's in love with her is the third person. Sorry, the third person that's in love with her is Gudong Mei, who is a Korean, but went to Japan to become a samurai, and is basically in, whatever counts as the mob. He's a sword, and he's amazing. I'm trying to, let me look at
but this is, see, there's very sticky, complicated relationships here. It's not just that all the men are in love with Go Ei-shin. That's true, they are. She's a tremendous woman. And the samurai who's working for the Japanese is, the playboy who's an aristocrat who's going to have a come to Jesus moment is as well. And so is our great American hero. But there's a fourth person that's left out of this, and that's Kudo Hina, who is the proprietress of a hotel. She's a pretty formidable character in her own right. Her husband, rich husband, mysteriously dies. Of course, it's left. Maybe the mystery's resolved later on. You guys can tell me, but I have a feeling. Kudo's the type who can take her fate into her own hands and do away with her husband if she has to. But she is in love with Eugene Choi, and is trying to figure out, and she's trying to figure out a way to get between Eugene and Go Ei-shin, because she realizes there's a relationship between the two of them. And so all the crazy shenanigans that are going on between the principals, she's watching it from the outside, and it's the potential spoiler for everything. I mean, she could blow everybody's cover. She's the place that she manages, or actually owns, the Glory Hotel, is sort of the Mecca, the center of this particular town. Everybody goes there, everybody drinks there, everybody takes women there, and as a result, all the secrets are sort of deposited in this place. So she's got a great deal of power, enough power to tell the emperor to pay for his coffee, which was, I think, one of the ballsiest subtle moves I thought I saw any character make. So yeah, I just wanted to clear up that this is not just a love triangle. I mean, writers love relationship.
It's a quadrangle. It's a quadrangle.
It's a quintrangle. If it's a quintrangle, there's five people involved in these messy, sticky relationships, and I love them. And you get way deep into the core of how they all interconnect. With each other, and that's sort of the meat of the story. I didn't want to leave her out though, because I thought she was quite formidable.
No, thank you for bringing her up, because and Mark, you're in for some spoilers, but I hope it doesn't. You'll still watch it, right?
I will see, because this has all the elements that I really like, and it took. I have to say, I suggest that it took me a long time to get into it before. It took me a long time because of the way the subtitles worked out, and I couldn't follow the story as well as I'd like to. So things were happening I didn't quite know why or what was going on, and the storylines were so complex. It took me a while to really pick up on them. But once you pick up on them, sort of like Jennifer, you said, after about episode 5, you got really hooked. You really do, because these people they're all positives, except for the villains. The villains are real bad guys, but the heroes who are contending against each other, really sort of in the way that Rand would think that heroes in life are. They're the ones that matter. They're the ones that are fighting amongst each other. The villains are sort of there, and they get in the way. They're sort of easily dispensable. It's the heroes that are the tough part of the story. So it's their values and the things that they stand for are really unusual today, to hear these things coming out of the mouths of someone in 1905, but in contemporary times, given the amount of cynicism that's out there with respect to American values, it's really strange to see a foreigner adopt the Americanism as his guiding principle and do it proudly. It's rather nice. Anyway, I just.
I actually think that's pretty common now. Like a lot of people that immigrate here are more appreciative of American values than the people that were born here. And
I think that's true. I think that's true. But what we hear from all the natives is that this place sucks.
Yeah, and then and if it does, why does everybody want to come over here? Why don't they go somewhere else? You don't see a lot of people swimming back to Cuba. But I think for me, Mr. Sunshine is probably one of the most American patriotic shows I have seen. Look, truly patriotic for freedom and independence and individualism. There's a great scene when Eugene Choi doesn't and is sort of ferrying Lady Asing across the ice to go to a potter. And the potter actually is the one who's the head of the revolution. And they're what was it? He hasn't told her yet that he comes from a slave background, because right. in this context, were he to associate with her in any way, as far as the Joseon dynasty is concerned, as a slave, he could be put to death. She could be shunned. The only thing that protects him from that is the fact that he's there as an American, and nobody dare F with him, not even Japanese, because by this time America had already established the might of their military. And nobody wanted a war with America, but she's telling him why she wants to fight the revolution. And she's telling him because of Korean independence and sovereignty. And I want Joseon back. And he's like, what are you fighting for? Are you fighting for the slaves? Are you fighting so that they can still be slaves? And this causes her, it causes her to pause, and then he reveals that he himself is a slave, and she visibly falls down. I mean, it is such a blow to her to realize, oh my God, this man's a slave, and she understands all the implications, but the words he says sink in. And I think throughout the series, her arc, in a sense, changes from wanting to fight for a free Korea as much as wanting to fight just for freedom in general.
Did you see that seed? Did you see that seed planted in her at all in the flashback to her relationship with Go Dong Mai, who becomes the samurai? Because when she's a child, she saves him from being beaten. His father is a butcher, and he's being beaten in the streets, and he's been beaten, and she takes him in and saves him. At the time, he can't appreciate it as deeply as it holds a place in his heart for the rest of his life, and it gives her a great deal of power over him, which he doesn't have because he's a very powerful and feared man. But at the time, he just throws in her face that you're just a rich kid. That's all you are, basically. You don't know what it's like.
And yes, and you learn explicitly that affected her, because one of the very last episodes, she says he fights valiantly for her all the time. I can't tell you how many people he has sliced up on her behalf, and in such a way that is like, go. I mean,
the samurai. You talking about the samurai?
Yeah. Go Dong Mai. He.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, and I'm just saying. He follows her to Japan to save. He learns she's in danger. He fights 20 different samurais he gets just completely caught up himself just to get her to safety. And the same thing with Eugene Choi. He runs after her and he fights for her. He goes everywhere that she goes. You've got these. And then also in the background, the Playboy dude who was supposed to be her husband has, finally understood, oh, there's no place in her heart for me. But it doesn't matter. I still love her. I'm going to do whatever I can. So he does everything he can for her. Like these three, and Kudo Kim or Kudo, I can never, Kudo, what's her, Kudo Hina fights for her as well. I mean, in a way, she's sort of in love with Lady Aishin in, not in a gay way.
I mean, because Aishin has beat her in a way in love, and she's unconquerable. I mean, we're talking about the owner of the Gloria Hotel. I mean, she's a ravishingly beautiful, very sensual woman, very worldly, knows what time of day it is all the time. And so you can imagine that she's not ever bested in a fight, and in this case she is, by virtue, I mean, by simple fact that Gi Shin is more virtuous in a sense and more pure. And I got to tell you, I mean, the way you guys are describing the stories, it's almost making me cry, because it just shows the power of love and how love brings out the best in you, the heroic in you, right? And this is the stuff that I think our culture forgets when they say all you need is love. They're talking about a squishy feeling and happiness. No, we're talking about love energizing you and making you go for it. Like, go for it and give it your all. Like, you go for that thing that you love for all that you are worth, and you protect it, your values, for all that you are worth. And she brings that out in all these men. That's cool. Now I'm dying to see the rest of it. I want to see this samurai fight, man. I've seen Eugene Choi fight, and he's a badass, and he's just in the Marine Corps. I mean, a guy who's in the early version of the Yakuza, who's a samurai, has got to be an even badder ass than that.
And brings out, and he's like, I mean, he's totally, have you seen the scene? You've had to have seen it by now, all of his jujitsu skills, right?
I've seen his judo. I've seen him do judo. Yeah, when he got mad and he took it out on all his Yakuza guys in the judoka. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. But and there, what I also love about this, which I think what I forgot to say in the preamble, is that we sometimes compare things to Atlas Shrugged, and we are almost very rarely is there a direct comparison, as there is in this story, between the characters in this show and Atlas Shrugged. All of them, I think we could say, we could pick out the characters that each one is in Atlas Shrugged. And I forgot what I was going to say. Damn it! Oh my God, I just forgot what I was going to say.
Was it something about Atlas Shrugged?
It was something about fighting. It was something about the fighting. But now it's too late. Sorry, folks. Hey, yeah. I just recovered what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
What I was going to say was, rarely do we have the comparison with Atlas Shrugged, but we also have, I think, a comparison to The Strike, the show that you guys wrote, where you see great heroes and humor simultaneously. So one could say there's humor lacking in Atlas Shrugged, but you can't say that about The Strike. There's a lot of humor through that, which I think makes the medicine of philosophy go down easy. And there's a lot of humor in this, between the men especially. Some of it's gallows humor. And one of the things that struck me was Do Jong Mei's constant refrain when these guys happen to find themselves in the same room, the three rivals.
There's only one bar.
There's only one bar in this town. They always happen to sit at the same table, and they ask the samurai to drink. He's like, if I drink too much, I might wind up killing you. And there's always that constant thing between the two of them, which doesn't sound funny right now, but
the three of them, right? Because then the journalist, I'm just going to call him the journalist now. What is his name?
His name is Kim Hui-song.
Kim Hui-song. So Kim Hui-song, when he ends up and he's always trying to, he's hilarious. He makes all kinds of jokes. He always just talks about how he's just far too handsome for anybody. And women fall in love with him all the time. And he tries to get Eugene Choi and Go Dong Mei, he tries to be comrades with them and friends with them. And they're always like, no, I'm going to kill you. No, I'm going to kill you, and shut up. But this goes on the entire, and Daniel said that he hated him at the start, but fell in love with his character. Yeah, he hated.
The case of many of the characters.
Because he
Yeah.
starts off as a smarmy kid, spoiled, rotten kid. You don't think he has any character at all. You think he's going to wilt under pressure. You think it's just all bluster and arrogance that comes out, but it's really not. He really has a deep sensibility, I think, primarily of shame for what his family has done. Maybe it was the reason he ran all the way to Japan to get away from that world. But he really understands what his family is, how they got where they are, and I think he hates it. And that gives him a great deal of character, and it gives him a great arc to come from too. So he starts off as a frivolous guy, and I'm sure his arc is to become serious or to do something serious.
Yeah.
You guys will be able to tell me. You guys will be able to.
He
more.
ends up being like absolutely critical in being a documentarian and journalist, and because and another aspect that I love about it too is that Aisling, when he tells Aisling that he wants to be a journalist, she's kind of like, the written word has no power. Guns have power, and that's part of what she learns, because in the very one of the last episodes, like the second or third to the last, she has to she's in Tokyo, and she has to, and everybody's trying to protect her, right? And that's when Godam Mei travels to Japan to protect her, but they actually use Kim Wi-sung's or his apartment as cover. And in his apartment, you just see books everywhere and poetry. And she opens up a book and she starts to read something. She starts to read a poem, and it's beautiful. And she realizes, oh my God, words do have power. What I love about this show, especially, and I just thought of it just now, is that for the heroes, and it's very different between the heroes and the villains, and that's really good, because when the villains are faced with reality, they continually try to evade it. They continually try to overcome it, or just they don't change according to reality. When the heroes are faced with reality and truths, they change. They update their opinions. They modify their points of views and their perspectives. So you have somebody like Godam Mei, who was nothing but a yakuza and samurai, but who actually ends up effectively fighting for the revolution because he loves this woman so much, and he sees the value in freedom.
Well, he starts off as a cynic who's for hire. He's for anybody who will pay him enough money to do what he has to do, and then he becomes an intense valuer, and that's what makes him a hero. The villains, to me, all of the villains in this, the ministry, the foreign minister who eventually gets his comeuppance, who was evil from the start, and then finally the main trader who is trying to replace him and that gets pushed into the Committee of Agriculture or whatever. They're all power lusters. All the villains seek power. All the good people seek values, and that is a distinction that is of Randian importance. I mean, that is an objectivist distinction between types of people, between heroes and villains, that I don't see in I'll say secular culture, but in normies out there in the world. I don't see that. People don't seem to understand that distinction in normal narrative, Hollywood narratives.
I'd love to be able to interview the writers of the show to see how they came to that conclusion to make it like that. Did they do that intentionally? And how much do they know about the heroes versus the villains?
Did they read Atlas Shrugged?
Yeah.
I'd love to know that.
Yeah, so similar. I'd love to know.
I would be very interested, because all of these characters have to fight against cultural structures, economic structures, government structures. They have to fight against these exterior artifices that want to oppress them, and they refuse to abide. They refuse to go along. They refuse to be defined by anything but their own terms, which I think is fantastic. See, that's where that's where Rand's, life, art is life as it ought to be, should affect you as the viewer. And you see that I ought to not allow these various pressures externally to influence me. I ought to define myself, not let these external things define me. That's an extremely powerful thing, especially nowadays, because we have a culture that is bought into the deterministic angle that you have no free will, that you're actually just a product of your genes, you're a product of your socioeconomic background, and you can't rise above it. That's why you need these elites in Washington to equalize things out, because things are just set by this power structure that's outside your control. And here you have a fucking slave, and you have the son of a poor butcher changing the world, changing forces with someone, and two aristocrats who basically,
and a princess.
but the princess throws off the princessness, and she throws away that distinction for something far better, which is the fight for freedom, for human freedom. And this is a message that I wish, the more I'm talking about this thing, the more I'm working myself up into a lather, and like really wanting to see it and thinking this might be the IV that I need to put into my veins every other month just to get my hero fix to keep me going from one minute to the next.
We did Clark first before we did Mr. Sunshine.
Yes.
Right. And I just remember, like, after Clark, I was like, thank God it's Mr. Sunshine. And I'd already seen it before, but I'm like, I'm watching it again. I mean,
yeah, you see something like Clark and you think everything is wrong with the world. Look what is wrong with the world. Look how people are sucked into superficiality and looks and glitz and glamour and lies, and nobody's more than an inch deep. And then you see something like this and you're like, oh yeah, there's that other part to humanity that's more important, that actually really matters. Clark doesn't matter. Eugene Choi matters. Right. And that's the great thing that Ayn Rand talked about. It's not the villains who matter. Yet most of our historical narrative and most of the narratives in film and TV, they revolve around these awful people. They think villains matter, and they don't. Heroes matter.
People keep telling me, "Oh, you have to watch Dahmer. It's amazing." And I'm like,
no,
why?
It's not amazing. I've seen 3 episodes of it. It's awful. It's terrible. Okay. Does what's his face act well? Yeah, he's good. He's a good actor. But watching a man, it tries to give you, Dahmer tries to give you a sense of where he came from, and that sense, I think, is supposed to give you, I don't know, a pang of empathy for a man who murdered other young men and then consumed their bodies. I'm sorry, I don't feel any empathy for that at all.
And there's nothing like, I look at a show like that, and I like shows that make me feel good about being a human and about being a valuer and
how naive,
caring for the right things. Pardon?
How naive you are.
Yes,
how
I
backwards.
know. I like shows that make me feel good about, the positive things that I'm trying to do in the world.
And I would say that's not just a preference. I would say that's a fucking necessity. I would say it's a necessity, right? It's like food. It's your spiritual food. You see something like this, you come away bigger. You come away knowing, no matter how bad you feel, it's possible to rise above that to whatever extent your power enables you to do that. You can do that. Yeah. And that's empowering as hell. You need that empowerment.
I think, and I was also just thinking that, realizing another theme that came out of it, and you just touched on it earlier, Mark, about how they don't define themselves by the class that they've been put in or by how they grew up. But this is also very much a show about the sins of the son are not, and
the father,
the sins of the father don't transfer to the son, kind of thing, even though that is the even though that's a saying and that's the belief. But you have somebody like Lady Asing who does not refuses to do what her family tells her to do, who she doesn't turn away from her family, but she turns away from the nobility. And then you have the journalist whose parents, by the way, were responsible for the deaths of Eugene Choi's parents. And so you've got Eugene and Kim Hun Sung. You have the two of them, and they both know it. And then you also have, which spoiler for you, Mark, Kudo Kim, the hotel owner. Her father basically sold her to the husband that she killed.
Yeah, he's a
okay.
very, very bad man. He's the man who was shot early on in the series, who told the kids from Joseon, "You've been abandoned by your country. Your fate is in the foreigners' hands." And he ends up thinking he's going to play the American hand. He gets rejected by them and basically turns coat to the Japanese. And he's looking for power too. He's looking to take over all of Joseon.
Well, so the interesting thing, speaking of these like incredibly complex relationships between the characters, he is the man who killed Lady Asing's parents.
Ah, yes. Okay, so his name is Lee Won-ik.
Yeah, Lee Won-ik. He killed her parents, and so Lady Asing and Hudo Kim have been sort of pitted against each other, but she doesn't know it. Lady Asing doesn't know it. Hudo Kim knows it. She learns about it later, and so just all of this stuff. All of these people have every single reason to hate each other in traditional terms, and they all, instead of that, they come together finding their common values for freedom and independence, which I loved it. I think it's
against a backdrop of extreme patriarchy and an extreme classism, extreme perspective about where you sit in the hierarchy. They all defy it, all of them. In fact, there's a great scene where, you know, the man who seeks to be the new minister of the treasury, who you find out is her father, walks into Kudo Hina's hotel and wants to stay the night, and she kicks him out. I love it. I mean, she makes the emperor pay for his coffee. She kicks her father out. She respects no one for their
I won't give this away, but wait till you see what she does as her final FU. You just wait. I'm not going to tell you.
It's very Atlas Shrugged.
That's awesome. She respects.
It's very Fountainhead. Yeah, that's true.
She's no respecter of persons for their stature, right? She's not one of these folks that sees authority and says, "Oh, you must be right, you must be good, you must be just. I'll respect you." And how often did we hear over the last 2 years how much we should invest in the authorities, the experts, the people out there who are designated our overlords? This is in rebellion to that. It's all about thinking for yourself and being your own person and defying that if it deserves to be defied, which usually it does.
So how much did you, go ahead.
I was going to ask what your thoughts about the ending and the fate of all of them without, I'm going to have to spoil
No, go ahead, say it, spoil it.
Everybody dies. except for Lady Asing. But they all die.
Don't tell me Eugene Choi dies.
He dies in a very heroic way, but
they die for her, don't they? They die protecting her.
They all die for her.
Yeah.
It's like,
they all die for her.
It's like King Kong. It's like, you know, the love of a woman. It tames the beast, and it makes the man do these incredible things.
And women too, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sure, it did. But you know, she had her through line before Eugene Choi showed up. She was determined.
She has to choose between him and her fight for Korea, and it's touching and hard to see her make that choice because you respect her for it.
She so reminds me of Dagny, who just fights until the bitter end for Taggart. Eugene Choi is the version of, you know, he's a version of John Galt. He's a tragic John Galt as far, you know, because he does end up dying in the end.
Gudang Mei, I think, is a great Gail Winan, but does he die?
Yes.
Yes, he has to die, but he doesn't die by his own hand. he's going to die doing something valiant. I hope.
He dies fighting for he dies, but he's like, this man has, I mean, what was God, not Die Hard, but what was the one that's like with Mel Gibson and
Ransom?
oh shoot. No.
Braveheart,
No, it was early on. Mel Gibson's a cop with the other
Lethal
dude.
Weapon.
Lethal Weapon. Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
I was in the third movie, Lethal Weapon 3. That's the-
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
What was your part?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
I was-
Daniel's been saying some stuff, but Daniel, I think you should like break in and just
Yeah,
say
Daniel,
some-
come on in, break in.
Come
yeah,
on,
sure.
Daniel.
This is our
Uh,
producer, folks.
I might even get my camera on. But yeah, I was just saying
Hey.
how even like John Gold was literally in a torture chair. Even he was very close to dying, and it's only the sense of life of Ayn Rand that like saved him. So I think it's still incredible for how long Eugene Choi has been able to survive in such a world. Because Korea is in a bad state in that era. It's very surprising that that you had even these people, these like really great people, being able to be there. And I think they kind of all had to die because it's Korea. It's
Well, that's true. I mean, definitely did you mean it's Korea, and Korea has a different sense of life overall than we do. And so to them, the hero, well, we have that here too,
No,
right?
I
I mean,
think
we have the Obi-Wan Kenobi idea of sacrifice, where you become bigger when you're dead, right? You become more powerful when you sacrifice yourself for the cause.
I think it was more they had to die because it was it would be like trying to portray a war like World War II, where you've got like these 5 heroes and they all just stay alive. It's not very realistic. This was Korea that was getting annexed by Japan, and the Japanese army was just too big for Korea to fight back all of them.
And the Japanese army is
really didn't like give a shit that much.
and they're just a couple of decades away from being imperialist Japan. They already are imperialist Japan, but that would take on the entire world in World War II. Let's not forget.
And so interesting, the character Eugene Choi I was reading is actually based on a real life person called Dr. Ihan Nu, who was
You looked a little bit like
in World War II. He was an
Yeah,
intelligence officer in World War II, and actually really brought to America's attention the importance of Korea as a as a nation and needing to be freed. And so this is really interesting parallels. And what I didn't realize, like, how many of you knew a whole bunch about Korea before?
No.
I did not.
so much and have such an appreciation for the alliance between America and South Korea now because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to learn a little bit for a black belt in Taekwondo, but I've forgotten it all. And I certainly didn't learn any of that.
What I do remember from Korea, and what was just concretized even more in watching Mr. Sunshine, was the subjugation that Japan put the Korean people through. After Japan annexed Korea, they forced the Koreans to give up their surnames and take on Japanese names. I mean, talk about like stripping you of an identity. They forced them to assimilate.
Much as the American slave masters did when they took the slaves off of the African continent and then transplanted them here, robbed them of their African names, and gave them English names,
and wouldn't let their own families raise them.
Right, and this is why Muhammad Ali made such a grand statement in the 60s when he dropped Cassius Clay as a name, because he said it was his slave master's name, and took on the name of Muhammad Ali as his real persona.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
So-
that's a
I think
digression.
No, it's good stuff. Daniel, you said that we've got some super chat.
Yeah, so we have a super chat from Ali for $5. She says, I'll say it. He played a cop named Billy that got shot by one of the bad guys. It was a good movie, so don't kill me. Thank you.
I was not a cop. I was a bad guy. My name was Billy Phelps, and I tried to rob a bank. And I only say one word in it, but I have a big, huge fight scene with Mel Gibson in an armored car. And I got to talk to Mel Gibson
Now we gotta look that up.
for hours about Shakespeare. Yeah, basically, I have one word. I'm like, Bill, or something like that. And the guy shoots me dead in the police station.
How many times have you died, Mark?
I've died multiple times just on Supernatural. So
Thanks for the super chat, Ali. Do we have anything else, Daniel?
And one more super chat from Martin. He says, thank you for talking about one of my favorite shows.
cool, Martin. Well, I wish
Awesome.
I saw the whole thing. Now I regret that I haven't seen the other.
Yeah, I'm thinking
13.
about rewatching it now.
Yeah, I'll probably have to
It's
watch it
one
a
of
few
those
times myself.
shows that you can just it's like it's like watching A Christmas Story or something. Like, oh, it's time. It's like it's the season to watch Mr. Sunshine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
but-
great, and I love where that name came from too, because I did see the episode where the name came from, where she was learning her S's and how and S's were all these celestial beings, and then she's waxes poetic about that, and is daydreaming about Eugene, and says sunshine and Mr. Sunshine in English. She's saying these things in English. It's really, really beautiful. A really
and
beautiful
it's
sentiment.
actually the you know how oftentimes when something comes over to America, they change the title of it, but the actual Korean title is like Matsumo Sunshine. So they kept the same name, which I thought was really cool. Now I have if any of the Korean filmmakers, creators, writers are watching this or will watch this, I have a complaint that I need to make. Please get actual American actors to play Americans, because there was not a single American, like white American, who was supposed to be a white American, who actually sounded anything like American. I mean, I could hear like Dutch accents. I could hear like Iceland, Russia, like Mark, are we short on actors in America? Are we short on
we're
actors
not.
that can actually act?
We might be short. We might be short on actors that would act for whatever they were offering in Korea.
We're talking
So-
about Eugene's officer.
Kyle,
Yes,
Kyle,
I
and
have
then
to say,
Kind of
His-
weird.
the school teacher, the English school teacher. She was Dutch or something, and she's
Yeah.
supposed to be. She's
the,
supposed to be.
the American actors, quote unquote, those portraying Americans are the weak link in the story. I'm afraid, acting wise, they're pretty off. And Eugene spends a lot of screen time with his good friend, the Major, who's supposed to be an American, and he's about as bad as it gets. So
I
it's
think he's a
yeah,
real Korean.
yeah, Daniel.
and they
Sorry.
just like him.
I think he's definitely Korean, and so he's speaking his second language, but it's very clear that he's not completely grasped it. He's not grasping everything that he's saying, and I hate when people act ideas. He acts a lot of ideas, and I like organic acting, which is why I want to suggest the next show we do is The Bear, because The Bear is nothing but organic acting. It's like a school for good acting, cinema verite, and it's about an artist too. So it's a lot more gritty, but still values oriented. But it's got all that crazy realism that lots of people can identify with. So he's not the picture perfect characters that we see in Mr. Sunshine, whom I would consider archetypal characters. The hero of The Bear is a complex character, but he's an artist and he strives hard for value. And there's characters within that realm that are forced to rise to a different level of work because of how intense he is and how good his assistant is, by the way. She's awesome too. And everybody across the freaking board in that show acts very, very very well. And they're only 30-minute episodes. There's 8 of them. It's eminently digestible for anybody who wants to see it, but check it
Is that
out.
on Netflix, Mark?
Hulu.
Hulu.
You can see it on Hulu because it was an FX. I think it was an FX show, and then they put it on Hulu. Yeah, it is. I agree with Mark. I've seen it. And
By the way, I'm surprised about the American comments because I didn't notice that at all, and it might be because I'm not American.
because you're
But
not American.
Yes, but Daniel, I think you have a better grasp of the English language than the major did. He
Really?
seemed to be.
I liked his character.
I like the idea of his character. I like a comrade in arms. I like two guys who have a brotherhood that has been forged in battle, and one saved the other guy's life, so they're linked forever. But
Yeah.
you know what? I would have played that part better. They should have brought me over there, and I would have loved to have played.
You would have actually.
Grizzled beard, blue eyes. All right, and a limp.
There was-
I already got it.
There was such a
Lame
great
arm.
opportunity. There was such a great opportunity, and this is where I think the show, we should have obviously been consulted. But there was just like you should have played Kyle, we should have been consulted, script consultants, or casting consultant. There was such a great opportunity to bring in American culture and slang, and but they just couldn't do it. I mean, Kyle is saying "gol darn," and it's like, who the hell says "gol"? Like,
Well, I mean,
and it's just
they probably did in the early 1900s, early 20th century. They spoke differently. That's
they could have, yeah,
There's
they
still-
could have. There was just ways that just the culture of the Korean language is very different than the culture of American language. And
well, remember, this is Victorian era America, so there would have been there would have been.
there was still stuff that could have been.
I mean, Victorian era America was still a racy place, but not publicly. They had their private, crazy, unleashed sexuality, but it was black suits and top hats and prim and proper, but two army men together drinking in a pub, who are bonded by the fire, could have been a much easier, real, more interesting relationship between the two. So I don't think it's going to go any further than 24 episodes. I haven't seen the end, so if everybody dies, it can't go any further. Otherwise, I'd make suggestions for season 2.
It's the series is over, but I will say that so I had to get a minor surgery a few weeks ago, and the nurse that was doing like all my workup and putting my IV in. She's telling me her name, and she said, my name is Jiwon, but not like G2, but Jiwon, and that's how I say it. And I'm like, are you Korean? And she's like, yes, I am. And because I was able, throughout watching the show, I was able to I could tell the differences. I learned the differences between the Japanese sounding language and the Korean sounding language. And so, she's impressed that, some white lady was like, are you Korean? But then my next question was, have you seen, Mr. Sunshine? And she's like, that is like the cultural milestone for our country. That is like, that's like their version of Roots. And the whole like, and one of the reasons, and this is why I love how amazing and heroic this show is because Koreans today are looking at it as, even as there are revolutionary factions that are trying to win back North Korea or try to free North Korea. The Koreans today are looking at this as sort of their fight song for independence. And there is
It's like our John Adams.
yeah,
Did you see John Adams?
I didn't see it, but
Oh.
I know about it, and I need to see it.
Yeah.
So
Well, that struggle today is reflected in the narrative, right? There's the nationalists, and we have that here. There's those who think that country means something. And there's those of us who think, well, country is a reflection of values. You have to be, and to be patriotic to a country, the country has to reflect certain values. Otherwise, the country's shit. and it's sort of the argument that he has on the Frozen River, Eugene Choi has on the Frozen River, when he says, what are you fighting for? What kind of life is it going to be for the slaves, for somebody other than you? Your country doesn't mean anything. It's the country is the sum of the values that dominate its culture. And if those values are bad, you need not be patriotic to it at all. You need not. Huh? What's that?
That was a very important part of this story to make sure that we got to that. Otherwise, it was what
the soil doesn't bind you. Many people in the Civil War fought for Virginia, for the state of Georgia, right? For North Carolina, South Carolina. They fought for the land that they were on, missing the entire premise, which was one country embraced American values and the other country rejected it and embraced the institution of slavery, which was evil and needed to be expunged. And that's the kind of blindness that nationalism gives you. And I like that these people are not blinded by that kind of crap. Anyway, I think we should get going pretty soon, right?
I think so. Daniel, it looks like we've got another super chat.
Yeah, we have one super chat, and then I have 2 quick points that I want to get in. So, super chat from Ali, she says, isn't the main actor from Bad Turn worse?
From
The Bear, Jeremy Allen White was in Bad Turn Worse, a movie that I did.
Oh, that's right. That was the movie that you were in.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was a clip that Mark sent to us about that, where you see that actor. That actor to me reminds me of Dustin Hoffman. But there was the clip that Mark showed. He was like really skinny and scrawny, and now he's like super buff and.
He's doing a wrestling movie with Zac Efron, or they're playing real life wrestlers. So he's getting all buffed up for it.
So Daniel, what were your 2 points?
Yeah, so I only wanted to add in, if anyone wants more of South Korean drama fix, I recently watched Juvenile Justice. It's about it takes place in modern South Korea, and it's about the judge who is a juvenile judge, and all of it's drama about how do you deal with kids that do serious crimes, how to what extent should they be punished as much as adults and stuff like that. So it's a couple of
is it documentary style?
No, it's more like a drama. I wouldn't say it's a documentary. And a couple of the characters from Mr. Sunshine also are there, so it's really for example, the grandma who takes care of Lady, she's one of the characters, so it's always nice to see. And I also wanted to add a quick point, because I saw similarities between the show and what my country went through, because in Slovakia, all art in romantic and realist art were also about being independent, because Slovakia was under another country for 1,000 years. So it was interesting to see similar, and also it pointed me out independence for independence sake doesn't give you anything. You really need the values. It has to start with the values, what you're fighting for. So even if I think
everybody needs philosophy.
Yeah. So Lady, I forgot her name. She wanted freedom, but it took all the characters that she met along the way for her to realize what it actually means. And I think that's really important.
Yeah,
absolutely, folks. It's about the values. And I think Mr. Sunshine is a great value for you. Check it out. If you're feeling depressed or down, if you think that the world is a little too much for you to handle, watch this show. Watch it through 5 or 6 episodes, and the characters will start to meld themselves to you, and their heroism will rub off on you. Guaranteed will rub off on you, and it'll make your day better. So check out Mr. Sunshine on Netflix. 24 episodes, great show. I think an 8.7 rating or somewhere thereabouts on IMDb.
8.7 out of 10. Yep.
Yeah, doing very well. So I think next week, do you guys mind reviewing The Bear? Do you mind doing that?
I've already seen it, and I'll watch it. I'll watch it again. I mean, it was a really quick. Like you could watch it, you could binge it in 2 nights, basically.
Okay.
Effectively, you could binge it in one.
I'll binge it in 2 nights this week if you want to do it Friday.
All right, cool. We'll do it. We'll do the bear next time, folks. All right. Any final words before we sign off? I have to get back to my celebration.
I think
Well,
no final words
no final
except for
words, no.
go forth and be valuers.
Yes. And thank you for joining
Yeah.
us, Daniel.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for
Value
inviting me.
value passionately, folks. Thank you, Daniel. This is Jack Schumann, Jennifer Blaney, and Mark Pellegrino from TV Talk from the Ayn Rand Center UK, signing off. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye bye.